Before we start this video, I will be making all of my mermaids from this challenge into stickers, along with my favorites from February. I plan to have them up in my shop later in June, so check out my shop so you don't miss them. But for now, on to the video. I'm drawing mermaids all month long for the annual art challenge, Mermay. This will be my second monthly art challenge of the year after February. Links on the screen or in the description down below. So if you're into mermaids or just like art, let us begin. Now, I have done previous mermaid attempts before over the years, and I usually do the official mermaid prompts, but this year's official list wasn't really something I was vibing with, and I couldn't really find any that I wanted to use the entire month. So, like February, I decided to make my own. And just like with that challenge, I chose to do one theme throughout the entire month. Fruits! And in order to make this list, I looked up different kinds of fruits, found out there's so much more than I ever realized, picked a website with just enough of them, threw them onto a wheel, and spun. So for the first day, we got apricot. A fruit I thought I never had until I looked it up and realized that I definitely ate it thinking it was a peach and believing the whole bag were bad because there wasn't much flavor in them. Yeah, they're good. I was just fooled by the delivery guy who thought an apricot was a peach. I will never forgive nor remember who he was, only the disappointment. Anyway, since this was the first day, I tried keeping her simple, and I used these versions of apricots for her tail fins. And I gave her a little apricot to hold because, why not? Since apricots tend to usually stay in the yellow and orange range, I made sure to keep her whole color palette relatively close together. I used this reference to color pick everything, and I used this scale brush I had gotten before for her tail to save time. If I remember where I got it, I knew it was for free, but if I remember, I'll put it up. I was thinking of doing this challenge lineless instead, which is why there was a short moment of me coloring before the line art, but then decided against it because I'm not used to it, and if I'm not used to it, that's gonna take even longer. I'm on a timer, people. I cannot waste it. So I decided to keep the coloring the way I usually do, and finally, we got our first day of Mermay. What do you think? Cute, right? And now for day 2, we got dragon fruit! One of the fruits I was definitely hoping for. Let me know which fruit you guys are hoping for, or if you're doing this challenge as well, which list are you using? I would like to know. So, funny enough, I recently learned that a dragon fruit grows on cacti, specifically this one, and it's also known as pitaya, and for sending people to the bathroom, especially the yellow ones. I personally have only ever had one in my life so far because they are expensive. In fairness, they apparently take a very long time to grow, so it's not entirely surprising. 6 years?! Okay, well at least my drawing won't take that long. Since I decided to make her tails the scales part of the dragon fruit, it was just a matter of making sure it actually looked like a dragon fruit. So I relied heavily on my reference for the colors. This is one of those times where you really just put colors wherever you think they look nice in, because nature's unpredictable, and I don't want to overthink again. And to match her tail and hair, I gave her scale armor. I thought it felt pretty fitting since just looking at a dragon fruit makes you think it's going to hurt as much as the cacti it grows on. So I made sure she had sharp features, even sharp and pointy teeth, sharp nose, sharp eyes, and sharp fins. I made her main body the inside of the fruit because it broke up all of the red and pink, and obviously the inside of the fruit needs to kind of be somewhere, especially the seeds, because the seeds were important and simple to add. So once I figured out how to color all of her scales, she was done. Ta-da! She definitely bites. But no need to worry, because with day 3 we got guava. Okay, so I absolutely love guava. Guava paste on Maria cookies is one of my favorite snacks. Guava paste in general is just a really good snack. And even then, I had never seen an actual guava before until now. Super simple, so this shouldn't be too difficult, right? Yeah, I don't learn. Because for some reason, simple is just so easy to overthink. Because the line art went well, with a few minor changes to fix the pose and not make the mermaid's tail the same as the rest of the mermaids we will be making. You would think the rest would be just as easy. But then I made the decision to start with the tail fin. And it bothered me so much the entire day, I kept messing with the colors and making it way harder than it should be, since I wanted to add some texture, but it just wasn't looking right. The seeds were simple: copy and paste a layer, move it a little down, make them a little bigger, multiply, erase, boom, seeds. But I just kept struggling with that fin. Eventually I figured something out in the end. I kind of lowered the seeds a little bit more so they don't just look like they're popping out of the fin, so that at least it looks like it works together. I skipped adding the dragon fruit in the last one, but I did add a guava this time. I wanted to show that guava fruits sometimes have these little grabby sort of looking things at the top, And surprisingly, that part isn't what is attached to the tree. It looks like it's the butt of the fruit. But hey, I don't grow guava, so what do I know? I have to explain why I gave the same thing to the top of her head somehow, right? Other than the tail fin, everything else went pretty well. Honestly, coloring the hair really helped me figure out the tail fin so I wouldn't be constantly annoyed by it. And with that, we have day 3. That tail fin haunts me. But now with day 4, we got... apple! At first I didn't really think much once I got this one until I started sketching. I don't know what happened, but I somehow entered a flow state the entire time I was working on this one. From start to finish, it was just super fun to do. I wanted everyone to know that she was in fact an apple mermaid. So of course I gave her an apple bob, the apple of my eyes, and peeled apple skins as her fins as well as apple slices for her tail fins. How can she scream more apple than now? Seeds. All the seeds. So yeah, this one definitely made me forget what time it was because I was so locked in. I did have some trouble deciding on the color of the apple and ultimately just decided to make her red with a little bit of green. I did debate on adding an apple somewhere, but I think she's apple enough. I decided to make her hair look like an apple in the reference I used and made sure to keep her as shiny as possible. Aside from maybe messing with the colors a lot, everything else went pretty smooth. The scales brush came back, and with that, we have day 4. I think she's going to be very hard to beat, but we got 27 days to go! So for now, day 5. We got... pineapple! I've never tried the actual thing before, but I definitely played a game called Pineapple on Pizza, and that was interesting. So how could I not try and do the pineapple justice? Pineapple has always kind of been hit or miss for me, since I don't mind it when it's sweet, but it always feels like it's fighting me. Which, depending on who you ask, it's very true. Just not exactly. Honestly, if you look up why pineapple stings, you'll probably see that the pineapple just has something called bromelain, which is the reason why it seems to hurt. So aside from the already spiky exterior, you also have to be careful of the spiky enzymes inside. It's not dangerous, obviously. Plenty of people eat it every day, just the more you know. Honestly, I remember learning the word enzymes for the first time from someone who learned about this and was spreading the word. Because everyone wants to feel smart, and what better way to feel smart than to know something most don't. Of course, everyone eventually learned about it, and now bragging rights were officially lost. But pineapples still hurt unless you cook them. So with that lesson out of the way, we now go to this drawing. That took me way too long to finish. It wasn't even because it was difficult, per se, but because of lines. Lines that make a pattern of overlapping not exactly circles or squares, but of shapes that make up the outside of a pineapple. I don't even want to remember how long this whole drawing took me because it reminded me why I put a time limit on myself before. Of course, part of the time was because I was trying to decide how to make the pattern because I didn't want to do the usual way most of us draw cartoon pineapples. So I tried a new way, didn't like it, then changed back to how I made it in my second sketch. And even then, this part was still another reason I took so long because I had to color all separate circles, square-ish shapes. But aside from that, everything was much faster. The hair didn't even take me long, and totally not because I was going to be late if I didn't finish. Don't mention the rings because they were a lot and a little last minute, but I think they still work. I think I made it good. Anyway, here's day 5. Yay! Moving on to day 6. We got Clementine. Aside from my favorite Walking Dead character, clementines are yet another fruit that looks like an orange, if that wasn't any more obvious. Because the list I found for the fruit wheel had 3 that looked exactly the same. Clementine, tangerine, and orange. Stay tuned to see if I get either of those. Clementine is definitely one of those fruits you have most likely seen, but either thought it was an orange, or you ate a tangerine and thought it was a clementine, because they're much smaller. Or a lot of possibilities of eating the wrong ones because a good amount of fruits just look alike. Who would have thought? Nature just copies and pastes, apparently. So to avoid making this mermaid look like my possible tangerine or orange mermaids, I made her a different kind of mermaid. Not really based off of anything, just not so woman. And I decided to make her green like the leaves instead of the inside of a clementine, because when I made the sketch, I found a reference that showed a clementine with its leaves looking like a thin person with its arms out, like the top of her head. If I find a picture, I'll put it up, but at least you can see the top of her head and know what I'm talking about. I made her tail fins little slices because I thought it would look nice. Just like the apple, I made the peels part of her clothing and made her have a little clementine hat hair. Scales brush came back, of course, and after putting some final touches, she is done. A sweet little mermaid who's as small as a clementine. I learned my lessons from the previous days to not overthink, but we'll see how long that lesson stays. And now, on to day 7. We got pomegranate, a very well known and loved, especially by me, fruit. Of course, I mostly drink the juice since eating the seeds seems to be a good snack, but I'm not a fan of eating them. I did try opening one up before and it was messy, but I'm pretty sure anyone who's tried it once knows how much of a horror scene you can make. It's fun. And fun fact, I learned my grandma once bought a pomegranate, but she had never had one before, so when she saw just seeds, she thought she got a bad one and couldn't figure out how to get the seeds out anyway, so she just threw the whole thing away. She regrets it to this day because she literally learned about it the day after she threw them away, and probably because I looked like I died a little inside when she told me. She enjoys the juice more now. So aside from that horrible story, back to the drawing. This is another I didn't change much from the original sketch. Just like with all of my drawings at this stage, I just made sure her anatomy was better, especially with her crown from the not so grabby part of the pomegranate fruit. I decided to make it a crown since I always thought they looked like little crowns and it used to remind me of the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland. At least I always thought she would love pomegranates. I know they have a whole connection with Hades and Persephone, but who doesn't know that? If you didn't, well, now you do. I decided to texture in the seeds of the pomegranate to both save time and not make them all look the same as the ones she's holding. I basically thought of making her the type of mermaid who carries her offspring on her until they're old enough to hatch and swim with her like a school of fish, before they grow old enough to separate and start their own school of fish. Other than that, it was all about making sure none of the colors bled too much into one another, and that they actually look like seeds. I used the same method I used from the apple for her pomegranate hair, and after all that, she is done. Witness a touching family moment. And for the last day of this video, day 8, we got honeydew. One I was definitely not going to complicate at all. Now, honeydew is definitely one of those fruits I only eat because it was with other melons, so I don't remember how they taste too well, but I think I like them more than cantaloupe. I also remember being little and seeing a honeydew for the first time, and because I couldn't eat it, because I was too young to hold a knife, I decided to treat it like a ball and just throw it up in the air. You know, how children do. Did I break it? No. Did I put it down because I missed and dropped it on the ground to a loud thud that almost hit my foot? Absolutely. But at least I didn't ruin the food, and that's all that matters. So for this drawing, I kept most of it the same, just made it more clear so I could do the liner as easily as possible, with a little trouble with the hands, of course. And I left the texture of the melon to the coloring phase yet again. And since the honeydew's colors are mostly green with a little bit of yellow, I decided to use the slices as a way to make the design more lively, with an emphasis on yellow. And I did miss it in the resketch, but I remembered later in the line art phase that I gave her a necklace out of the honeydew seeds. Thankfully I remembered before I started coloring, but it wouldn't have been a difficult thing to fix. The bigger issue would have been if I completely forgot about it until after I finished the whole drawing. Because it's always after you finish. So thankfully avoiding all of that, coloring wasn't very difficult and I wasn't allowing myself to overthink on how to do the melon texture, so I continued coloring how I usually do, and then scribbled. I scribbled like a maniac the whole time and used the gradients to help. It all looked nice enough to not bother me into overthinking again. Even the seeds texture method was from the previous days. And once all the textures are done, she was finished. A lovable and lively mermaid. And now here are all the first week of Mermay completed. We did it. Well, I did it. I hope if you guys are participating, please let me know. 1 video down, 3 more to go. So I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am, and I hope you look forward to all of my videos, or at least the rest of the days of Mermay. Let me know which ones were your favorites. I think mine so far are apple and honeydew. And like, comment, and subscribe for more. Check out my shop, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye. Welcome back to a weekly video of Mermay, where I spend the entire month of May drawing mermaids and sirens alike once every day. Starting with day 9, we got avocado. The fruit that I always thought was a vegetable until I remember it literally has a giant seed, like a peach. or like the apricot I did last video. So of course I did a double take when I first saw it on the fruits list I chose to use, and now it has been chosen. I think it's safe to say that I don't eat a lot of avocados, let alone know a lot about them. Except that they're super healthy, on toast, and apparently called an alligator pear, or that there are avocado flowers. Look at them, they're so pretty. Unfortunately, I did not use either of those facts as inspiration because how could I not go for the iconic look of a simple avocado? I'll definitely save the flowers idea for a future video though, so keep a lookout for that. But back to the drawing, I used the classic pear shape of an avocado for her hair, as well as tried to give her a quote-unquote pear-shaped body type. And the one big thing I was thinking about was to whether or not make two versions, where one is the avocado half that has the seed and the other without it. Let me know if you guys think it would be good to have both versions as a pear. No pun intended because it is an avocado. I of course decided to only do one mermaid and kept the seed half. So again, I did not learn about the avocado flowers until after I was finished, but I did use the leaves for her tail fins instead, since I already made the inside of the avocado her hair. The scales brush has returned, here's the content ID, I used Clip Studio, and I kept the texture very simple since an avocado is usually pretty smooth. Once I got all the colors and shading done, she was finished. Here is day 9. And yes, I had to give her an avocado top. Now moving on to day 10, we got banana. Another superfruit right after avocado. Best known for being the potassium fruit and one of the fastest spoiling fruits you could ever have. Fun fact, I recently learned that bananas are considered dangerous for boats for bringing bad luck on a sea journey. Things like if you bring a banana on board, you can cause the rest of the food to rot just as fast as the banana spoils, or repel any fish so no one can catch any, or worse, cause ships to either sink or just plain disappear. Honestly, thinking logically, it's not hard to believe why any of these superstitions started. Since bananas spoil so fast, I wouldn't be surprised that it caused ships to be reckless, trying to make a delivery before the bananas go bad. And if your food rots out in the insanely large ocean, yikes. That comes from the fact that bananas release something called ethylene gas, which causes other food to rot faster. I don't know, science. So if you ever wanted to go fishing with some lunch, you know what to avoid. And avoid the sunscreen, yes, just in case. Now with that fun fact done, I decided to use banana slices for her tail fins to show off the little seeds in a banana and the peel as her dress. I did think to turn the banana peel upside down so the peels could act like octopus legs, but I had that thought a little too late and just kept my first idea. Of course I had to make her hair the bundles of bananas we always see, and it made her eyes little bananas. I added the little spots of browning to have a little more detail, and I avoided using the scales brush this time to keep the banana as banana-like as possible. Now I feel like I've said the word banana too many times. It can't be that bad, right? Maybe it was the retakes. Either way, here's day 10. Which song do you think works for her? And now on to day 11, we got kiwi! Okay, so I'm just getting superfoods so far, and I am not complaining. Then again, every fruit is really healthy, so that shouldn't be surprising. What qualifies something as a superfood? Well, besides that, if you're wondering why it had to be called a kiwi fruit, it's because there's another kiwi. This kiwi, the kiwi bird from New Zealand. Adorable. Now, funny enough, the kiwi bird not only predates the kiwi fruit, the fruit was originally called the Chinese gooseberry. Then in 1959, it was changed to kiwi fruit because it just looks so much like the kiwi bird. Ain't that fun? Also, there are multiple colors for a kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruits can be gold and red. I've never seen those before, so let me know if any of you have, and if it tastes any different. Now for the kiwi mermaid, I made the inside of a kiwi fruit, her body, and tail fins. I think the seeds are pretty important in selling the kiwi fruit part, and I gave her a little kiwi bun for a little touch to her hair, plus to show off the fruit. It was supposed to be more fuzzy, but I ran pretty late with this one again, so I focused on getting the main kiwi body done first. I think her tail fins are one of my favorites, and I forgot about it until I started recording. I was going to give her a little kiwi bird tattoo somewhere. I don't know if that was a good or bad idea to avoid, but now you know, because just like now, she is done. A sweet mermaid that shares a name with a fruit and a bird. And now, day 12. We've got papaya! A fruit I'm a little surprised I've never actually tried, especially since I enjoy saying papaya so much. And just like the avocado earlier, papayas also have a flower when they grow. I really should look at more plants when they grow. There's so many with flowers I never knew about. Another fun fact about papayas is that it's not surprising I never ate one before, since they have a lot of problems to deal with. Like 2 major diseases that attack papaya trees, a bunch of fungi, pests like fruit flies, 2 spotted spider mites, and the papaya whitefly. Also, never eat an unripe papaya because you could be allergic to the latex fluid in one, and it would not be fun. I didn't know they had a latex fluid, and so do you. I just had to add those in because they were the first facts about papayas I found out about. You can still enjoy the juice if I made you scared of the actual fruit. I might get one after this video, or maybe some jam. I'm really curious to how it tastes. So before I go grocery shopping for some, I decided to make my mermaid hold a papaya to show the difference. And because I was struggling with her pose for a good while, I saved time by making the fruit have its actual seeds. And a little tip for making poses, it's good to have your character act like they're interacting with something or someone off screen, just so you don't always draw the same pose over and over like I used to. So once I got all the colors figured out and added a little gradient on her hair, she was done. At least she's safe from the usual pests in the water. Moving on to day 13, we got goji berry, also known as the wolfberry. I'm not kidding, this one is yet another superfood. This one though is an ingredient in East Asian traditional medicine too, so it's not a surprise that people like to exaggerate how good it is. So much so that the FDA gave 2 goji distributors warnings for false advertisement, and is mostly considered a new drug. It looks like the goji berries got into a lot of controversies for similar reasons in multiple places, but ultimately you can still eat them just fine. I just find it a little funny that most of the information is either about how healthy a goji berry is, or about how they were in multiple controversies for not being good enough for medicine. Thankfully, I didn't need any of that to design my mermaid. Just looking at a picture of one, you can see why I chose to make her dorsal fin a bunch of goji berries, along with the tail fins once again being the leaves. I thought her holding a goji berry would be cute. I was a little worried about time when I came up to shading her, but I somehow made it, especially with the scales brush. It helped me so much. And now we have our 13th mermaid all set up. Pretty simple, just a bit tedious. I might try a goji berry soon. And now for day 14, we got cantaloupe. Okay, so if you watched my first video, you know what I said about cantaloupes, and I have to clarify, I don't dislike them, I just prefer the other melons. I'm very biased towards the watermelon, like most are, from what I've seen. But for every cantaloupe lover, I'll just give you mine, and we can all be happy. Also, make sure to wash your cantaloupes thoroughly because there's been cases of salmonella on the outside of them. I never knew that before, but now I guess I understand why I'm more likely to see a full honeydew or watermelon over a cantaloupe. Because all I've known about cantaloupes is the cube versions. Either way, it is also known to be a type of true melon. Science classifications can be so funny and weird. But aside from that, looking up references for cantaloupes was weirdly way more difficult than I thought, because they seem to have different seed pockets, that's what I'm calling them, depending on how and where they're grown, I guess. And they keep comparing them with honeydew. So it was a bit confusing, but eventually I decided on one and focused on coloring and shading. I did do the same scribbles trick I did on my honeydew from my previous video, but this time I tried using a thicker brush to mostly cover the green underside. I'm not entirely sure if that was a good decision, but eventually I finished, and a little overlay to make her brighter and closer to cantaloupe, because I accidentally made her a little too red. She was done. She would choose the cantaloupes over the other melons. Now moving on to day 15, we got plum! Oh, I just had to make a Courage the Cowardly Dog reference with this one. Happy Plums! For those that have no idea what I'm talking about, Happy Plums is a recipe made by Muriel in the show Courage the Cowardly Dog. The show has always been one of my top favorites, and this episode is one of my favorite. Courage basically uses the happy plums to help everyone from nowhere from the unhappy cannonballs made by the depressed Dr. Zlost. Yes, his name is a pun. It's super sweet and hilarious, and I have always been curious about how to actually make happy plums. Some people have made their own recipes referring to happy plums. Will I ever give them a try? Maybe. especially because it seems that they involve sour cream and balsamic vinegar. So let me know which one to try and we'll see what happens. But for now, back to the drawing. I think I did a good job keeping her plumb. The dorsal fin was a very last minute decision, but I think it helps balance her, specifically when it comes to the colors. And I'm afraid I made the sour cream seem like the plums are steaming underwater, but it's supposed to be the sour cream floating away. Hopefully it's not too weird, but I think she's adorable either way. I may be biased, but I'm very happy with her. Once every plum and leaf is shaded, she was done. I hope she helps make your day just a little bit happier. And now, the final day for this weekly video, day 16. We got cranberries! A classic holiday fruit since they are harvested between mid-September to early November. Now, I don't know about you, but the very first time I have ever heard of cranberries were when people talked about Thanksgiving dinners. I never knew much else about them until I finally decided to try some once I saw a bag for the holidays. I dried them out and made cranberry juice and white chocolate chip cranberry cookies. And now I have my entire family hooked on them. Me included. A pretty big reason as to why I finally caved in to trying them was seeing how they were harvested. They literally dragged them in the middle of a cranberry sea. That just looked so fun to do that I looked more into it to see how I could at least try to do it once. If they accepted volunteers, I would contribute. Now, of course, the liver is one thing, but I'm sure just doing it for a little while wouldn't be so bad. Oh god, there are spiders. Oh, they're called wolves. Oh, they're called wolf spiders. Oh. So wolf spiders made me say nope, just buy some when you see them in the store. And I did. Now, before you get the fire, wolf spiders are very important and not aggressive. But they do tend to climb the highest thing in the sea of cranberries once the fields are flooded to pick them. So, of course, that would mean the people in the cranberry sea, but hey, they all look happy when I see their pictures. So, I thank everyone who harvests cranberries for their bravery and hard work, because I could never, but I will enjoy their cranberries. And now, back to my drawing. I have decided to make her dorsal fin the cranberries, and made her whole body, instead of just the tail, full of scales because I thought it would look very much like the sea of cranberries. And with a little cranberry beret to top her off, she was very easy and fun to finish. Ta-da! Isn't she adorable? And here are all the mermaids for this video. Week 2 has officially finished, and I'm hoping to keep staying on schedule for next week's video. Which ones were your favorite? Mine, I think, is definitely the cranberry and then the plum. We are halfway into the month and we still got 2 more left, so I hope you all look forward to those and for the rest of my shorts showing off all days. But until then, like, comment, and subscribe for more, check out my shop, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye! Welcome back to week 3 of Mermay, where I spend the entire month of May drawing mermaids and sirens alike once every day. Starting this week's video with day 17, we got blackberry! Another fruit that has a lot of lookalikes. Every time I was looking up references for this one, it was a lot of comparisons to other fruits that look just the same. Because, you know, that's helpful when you're trying to find references and making a whole list of a bunch of fruits. So starting with the 17th drawing, while I was sketching this, I was actually eating yogurt with blackberry jam. Because my favorite thing is to mix the jam with vanilla yogurt and at times freeze it. I like frozen yogurt a lot. This wasn't even planned, I just forgot I had blackberry jam. So of course, I know what blackberry jam looks like, and I decided to make her hair and tail fin jam-like. At least jam underwater. Because I wanted to make it seem like how actual jam would be, where it starts to break apart and float away when it's underwater. Almost like the hair and fin are constantly growing and just really flowy. That, and also because I needed some color. The jam helped me feel full and design my mermaid. Now the one problem I had was that I forgot about one aspect even during both sketches. If you're wondering why I decided to make her eyes without pupils, it's because she was originally going to be inspired by an anglerfish. Because the color of blackberry jam is very red and the fruit is usually very dark, I thought it would be interesting if I made a mermaid who would blend in the dark, but screams danger. I made her very cheery and friendly because she's meant to be deceiving even in the light. Your only warning sign? The very bright red jam flowing around her. But since I forgot in both sketches, I unfortunately forgot to include her little bulb that would have been either red or just like her eyes. I did include the usual quote-unquote spikes that are on blackberries in her design that could also be a warning. Those would be harder to spot though. But even with that mistake, I think she still looks adorable. This is the scales brush that I've been using throughout the entire month so far, and with the scales brush's help, she was finished. So, would you trust her in the water? Now moving on to day 18, we got strawberry! A very popular fruit that is used on majority of romantic occasions. Who would not know what a strawberry is? I did end up using the strawberry's actual flowers as part of my Mermaids design. If you missed it last video, I found out that a lot of fruits grow flowers before they're finally a fruit. I'm sure I missed more, but you can check out which ones I didn't miss. Now of course, I couldn't ignore the inside of a strawberry because they very easily look like hearts, especially with the reference I used. I decided to keep her hair short with one side shaved because I wanted to add some green on her head, without messing with the shape. Originally her whole hair was going to be green, but then I thought it would be better to include more white instead, like the inside of a strawberry. The seeds were pretty simple, and the rest of the time was for getting the strawberry design as right as possible. This one definitely took me a while, and unfortunately unlocked the perfectionist again. That happens a lot. I really gotta speed it up. Let me know what you guys would have done differently, because maybe you might help me not spend so much time over small details. But of course, we still have a couple more days to go, and she was finally, thankfully, completed. What do you think? I think she is definitely romantic. And now for day 19, we got durian! Wow, I was pretty surprised by that, and also a little bit scared. Of course, many who know of this fruit will either tell you this is one of the worst smelling things in the entire world and super dangerous, or it's super tasty and used in a lot of ways. I mean, for as infamous as it is used a lot. It is eaten a lot. It is eaten enough for it to be constantly harvested. So, to anyone that doesn't like it, I'm sorry. There's plenty that do. Now, with this being a rather infamous piece of fruit, I thought I should make this mermaid a little different. Especially because durian is very easy to spot because of its shell. And, of course, the smell, but you can't smell underwater. So, I decided to turn my mermaid into a horseshoe crab kind of mermaid. After all, what better way to show off the spiky shell than to make it an actual shell? I went back and forth on the idea of making her tail either the inside of a durian tail fin or a club tail. Ultimately, since her hair already had the inside, I kept the club tail idea. For coloring, I went for a messy method to save time, since I didn't want to spend too long again. I used the directions of the brush strokes to color most of the spikes, at least enough where your eyes won't notice how messy it is until you actually focus on them or zoom in, which, you know, don't do. It will make you use so much time up. Honestly, the messy method was very handy. I also started coloring with the darkest shade first before adding on the lighter shades, like painting. We'll see if I keep using this method from now on. But for now, she is finished. Here is day 19. I believe she's pretty great once you get to know her. Moving on to day 20, we got mango! The fruit most famous for many people still not knowing how to cut it. I'm still not sure how to, since every time I try to follow a video, the ones I have a way larger seed inside than the videos do. I'm still probably doing it wrong, but I'll still eat and cook with it. I don't need perfect cubes, mashed up mango is fine. I was a little worried since even while making the second sketch, I wasn't 100% sure on her design, but I kept the references nearby and decided to go with the newest details, since the mango is pretty simple anyway, until you get to the colors and shape. Which is why I used the shape of a mango for her hair and the allegedly easiest way to cut a mango for the inside. Who doesn't love a little mango square? I definitely focused on texturing and coloring to add more to her, especially since I wanted to use the bright red a mango can have. Once I got to this stage, I was pretty happy with everything. The red really helped, like, just make the whole thing mango. So now thanks to that red, she is finished. What do you think? I underestimated her, and now she is one of my favorites. And now for day 21, we got blueberry! Time for another classic small berry to join the month. I've always wanted to design something with blueberries, though I unfortunately thought of having a blueberry jellyfish mermaid too late, like way too late. But I still like my little bonnet wearing mermaid. I changed a few things from the first sketch, like the way her bonnet is positioned, and more specifically her tail. I thought since I didn't have much green anywhere else, the leaf tail fins would stand out a little too much, and since I didn't really need any leaves, I turned them into a trail of blueberries instead. I didn't have any direct reference, but I was basically imagining the way she would move would be similar to a snake. I could say like a shark, but their tails don't really move as much as I imagined, so definitely more like a snake. I don't know why, for some reason, just the movement, it just got stuck in my head, and I could not do it. I wanted long sleeves since not only would it fit the bonnet, but because I wanted her to have the ridges from a blueberry around her design. So once I got it all down, I focused on color and texture. Of course, my main problem came from having only blue and purple to work with, but I think turning the ridges into a lighter shade helped a lot. I decided to use the scales brush all throughout her body and tail to both make a pattern for a bunch of small blueberries and to, of course, save time. Who would have guessed? Thankfully, once I got all the blueberries shaded, she was done. Ta-da! Imagine seeing a little line of blueberries in the water. That would be a sight to see. It'd be so cute. Continuing on to day 22, we got passion fruit. One of my favorite drinks, especially to mix with. So this one I was already pretty happy with when I started her sketch. The most difficult part? Anatomy. Especially hands. So of course her hands gave me some trouble, which is why they changed so much. But eventually I got there. I did think to leave her arms crossed like I originally sketched, but it didn't feel passion enough, is the best way I could describe it. I definitely wanted to make her a little more lively with her new pose. I already knew how her colors were going to be, and I don't think I really changed that part. So it was all about making sure the line art was good enough to move onto coloring. I've also realized that with a lot of my drawings, I tend to make them even bigger by the time I get to their line art. Like, looking back and forth from beginning to end is one of my favorite things to do because of the changes. Which ones do you think I've changed the most? Or let me know which fruits have been your favorite so far. I also did focus on making the more white parts wavy to kind of look like a shell. So now once I got to the coloring, it was pretty simple. I did have some difficulty trying to choose the base colors since they kept looking more pink than I wanted, but then I remembered it was just the base colors. They always change. Especially with my style of coloring. Honestly, she might be my favorite so far. I'm just really happy at how she turned out. I felt similar to how I felt during day 4 in my very first video. It helps that her whole coloring looked pretty clam-like too. Now with her clam-like hair shaded, she is finished. Ta-da! I think she'd love gossip. Gossip would definitely be her currency. Moving on to day 23, we got starfruit! A fruit I always thought was just a little made-up fruit from people's imaginations. Because when don't we imagine stars? Especially since one of the times I would hear about them would be in a very strange crossover game. Anyone know which one I'm talking about? Definitely does not have multiple games with what people would like to say complex lore. Listen, I love fantasy and I'm used to seeing a lot of inspired things turned weird in a good way. Starfruit was not one I thought was actually real. And of course I had to make her have 5 everything. It's not a classic star that we all draw if it isn't 5-sided. Ignore the ones on my head. So I decided to give her star-shaped hair and a star-shaped tail, like a starfish. Except of course since the anatomy matches more to an octopus or squid, star squid. Looks like a starfish when she's still, but becomes a star squid when she moves. Something like that. As you can see, I was going to give her a regular mermaid tail, but since I was already influenced by a previous day, I decided to take this chance and make her the one with the squid body. Coloring was a lot more simple than I thought, because by this time I was already using the darkest shade first, and all I had to do was add in the green first, then slowly add the yellow to cover the majority of her. You know, to match the actual coloring of a starfruit. I think the starfruit was definitely a good idea to use for this method. I wanted her loud and lively, so once I believed I got the energy down, finished her shading, she was done. Ta-da! Your friendly star in the sea that will absolutely love to be friends with you. And finally for this video, for our last day of the week, day 24. We got watermelon! All honeydew and cantaloupe lovers feared this day. But now, the one melon that is beloved by many is finally here. Of course, it goes without saying, I am very biased for watermelons, and I will always enjoy them. So I had to do this one justice, especially since I already talked about honeydew and cantaloupes. I definitely changed a lot more than I thought I would. I initially thought I would mostly fix the pose and the hand anatomy and I guess fishtail anatomy, but I even added some more elements to her, specifically sea slug elements. These sea slugs, with the waviness to them. I really like waviness. Is waviness a word? Who cares? I like waviness. Though it's not like the sea slugs inspiration came out of nowhere, I just exaggerated them more as I continued to resketch and do the line art. More than I expected, but I am definitely not complaining. Once I got to coloring, I did try to use different hues of the watermelon to not make them accidentally clash. I'm not 100% sure if it made a difference, but I do think she looks amazing. And once I got her colors down, along with the main shading and all that fun stuff, finally came to the iconic watermelon lines, because I'm pretty sure it would not look as good without them. Or more so, it wouldn't look finished without them. I did not forget, thankfully, but I did change my original method. Originally, the pattern lines were going to be part of the line art, but then I thought, maybe just keep them green because I didn't want them to be the same color as the line art. Just like the previous mermaids, all of their lines are colored, and I didn't want to spend time recoloring the watermelon lines because as much as it would look really nice, I know I would spend way too long on them. So then I thought to make them over the shading and erasing them to shape the lines into the patterns instead was better, because they would be thin enough to not really need any shading and look very watermelon-like. So I am very happy to say she is finished. Ta-da! She absolutely knows her worth, but she loves her cantaloupe and honeydew cousins. And now here are all the days for this video. Thank you guys so much for keeping up with me so far, and I hope you stay until the end because next time will be the last week of Mermay. So let me know which days so far have been your favorites. Mine for this week would definitely be watermelon and passion fruit. Honestly, this week may be my favorite week, so I really wonder what the last week is gonna be like. But until then, like, comment, and subscribe for more, check out my shop, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye! Once the last 4th week is out, I will be making all of them into one video, so look forward to that. Alright, now bye. Welcome back to week 4 of Mermay, the final week where I spend the entire month of May drawing mermaids and sirens alike once every day. Starting this week's off with day 25, we got boysenberry, a fruit I never think about until I hear the name, and then I forget all over again. Now this day was one I was a little worried about because if you look them up, they pretty much look like the blackberries I used last video. And at times they seem to be pretty red, which also makes it kind of confusing. But I did use that fact to help me separate it from the blackberry mermaid, as well as use the same rule I did with my clementine mermaid for my very first week. If you've seen those, you'd know that they were more on the smaller side, so I could avoid making similar looking fruits look the same. Because there are a lot of fruits that look the same, which is so great when you don't know a lot about fruits. But thankfully it wasn't a huge issue, and this time I wanted to make sure I got the shape of the boysenberries. I wanted to make sure I got the shape the boysenberries seem to have when they grow, you know, kind of like long. I tried to do the same when I made my blackberry mermaid, so you guys can tell me if I did well in that aspect. I used the shape of the boysenberry for her hair, and I decided to add a little more bumpy texture for her line art, just to add the illusion of having the many little berries as her body. I was already planning on using this scales brush right here to texture her tail, so once I got to coloring, I had less to worry about when it came to rendering the many berries. This brush really saves me a lot of time. And in order to keep the colors from being entirely the same, I changed the direction I moved on the color wheel for her shading. So for her skin color, I moved the colors closer to the yellows, and for her main body, I moved the colors closer to pinks. I started using this method more during this week, so let me know what your thoughts are to using it. I decided to use the boysenberry leaves as her tail fins since I didn't want them to blend into her tail, since I didn't want to make more berries as her tail. I'm already rendering enough, and it wouldn't really look right with the scales brush. Maybe it wouldn't have been a bad idea, but at the moment this is what I went with. I also wanted her to hold the boysenberry this way because I thought it would be cute to have her see one and admire it because it looks just like her hair. So once I got every berry rendered and happy, she was done. Ta-da! A lovely and friendly start to the final week. Now, continuing on to day 26, we got orange! Here's the fruit I was preparing for since the very beginning. Now, I have to admit something. I did get tangerine first after I got clementine, but since they look so similar, I thought to re-roll and try another fruit. After a couple more days, I ended up with tangerine again. I re-rolled and then got orange right after I re-rolled. Now I decided if I got either one of these 3 times, then I will let it be and draw it. So you would think the tangerine, the one that showed up twice already, would win, right? Because can someone explain to me how I got orange 2 more times throughout the days and never tangerine again? I'm saying this after I got all 31 days. So of course, at that point, I just had to do the orange. But I did roll one last time after the 31st day as a freebie. I do this whenever I have this kind of thing just to have choices, in case I'm really not feeling a day. I ended up with lemon as my 32nd fruit to replace a day for this kind of thing. In the end though, I decided to keep orange since it wasn't even the first fruit that looked like a previous day. Look at the boysenberry. And honestly, I am very happy with the results. Sketching her was pretty simple. I thought making the outside of an orange wrap around her like I did with the apple mermaid was a good way to separate the colors. And I made her hair a bob to copy the round orange. The little orange was originally me trying to get the shape of the orange with the stem and the leaf down, but I decided to keep it for the final piece because I thought it was too cute not to. I was also debating on her left arm during both sketches. At first I thought to just leave her arm behind her back to avoid covering up any more details. But then I decided to mix the missing arm with another idea I was already playing around with, using the inside of an orange as either white spots or battle scars. Combining both dilemmas into one, I still really like it. And of course, I gave her a stem on her hair, but I made her tail fins orange slices. I enjoyed rendering them when I made my Clementine mermaid, so I didn't mind doing it again. Now to talk a little bit more about her colors, I used the inside of an orange for her main body to separate the more orangey parts. Since the inside tends to lean into yellows, it helped a lot. So once I got all her colors and textures down, she was finished. Ta-da! What do you think? Pretty cute and deadly, right? And now for day 27, we got pear! Now with this one, I don't actually have much to say because I think for this one I mostly zoned down on. I thought she was a pretty simple mermaid to draw since I didn't have to worry about other fruits being too similar to a pear. At most, the problems would have been with the avocado from my second week, but that was also easy to make different. The difference in seeds kind of helped. I pretty much focused on making her as pear-shaped as possible and adding some seeds for a nice little touch. I also gave her the curved stem because it seems like it was pretty common in pears based on the references I found. I decided to use a single slice of a pear as her tail fin because I thought it would be long enough to make sense. I was also reminded that pears come in a variety of yellow, red, and brown as well. But of course, I had to go with the classic green pear. I wanted to add the inside of a pear in her hair as well for more flair and to help make the movement a little more clear. Most of my focus went into her pose and rendering, honestly. Figuring out how to separate the colors was pretty simple, and by this time, I did not want to overcomplicate anything, because I have a tendency to do that, especially in the last week. So I kept rendering pretty simple. Most of her was pretty self-explanatory, so thankfully I did not need to spend too much time over indecisions. And because of that, she was finished. Ta-da! I don't think she was the fastest mermaid I've finished, but she was definitely up there. And now moving on to day 28, we got Cherry! So before I even get to this sketch that you see right here, my first idea for my cherry mermaid was to make her sort of like a boxer. Specifically, I was thinking of making her either a regular boxer with the cherries being her fists, or like the mantis shrimp. Or a little bit of a combination of both. I've always liked mantis shrimps because of the fun fact about their punches and because they always look so pretty. But then I ended up not really liking that sketch too much, so I redid it and made this one instead. Especially after I was reminded about how cherries tend to be connected at the stem. That's what inspired her hair initially. Of course, before I did the second sketch and then the line art and then changed her hairstyle again, just a little bit. It wasn't too much, it was just a little more defined. I also wanted to wrap the stems around her body as little accessories since cherries are usually the final touch to a dessert. So what else is the final touch? Of course, little accessories to an outfit. At least that was my thought process. I also wanted to give her a different outfit to make her a little more dressed up for the same reason. I also decided to make her like an anglerfish with her cherries being what attracts others to her. And that is why I decided to replace the leaf tail fins with a cherry instead. Because as she swims, the only thing you see from all angles are the cherries. And with that in mind, once I got to her colors, I decided to make the cherries the most bright red part of her entire design, with the rest of her being slightly darker to hide easier. And when I got to shading her, I used the method of changing the direction of the color wheel to keep the reds from becoming the same hue. For the bright red, I went towards the yellows, and for the darker red, I went towards the purples. I used the scales brush for her tail, then rendered the rest, and finally, she was finished. Ta-da! What song do you think fits her? Also, her cherries were extremely fun to render. And now for day 29, almost there, we got grapefruit. Now, if you're wondering why in my sketch it says day 30, it's because when I wrote down the list in my notes app, it for some reason auto-corrected grapefruit into grape. I don't know why, it just did. So when I started the wrong day, I knew something was off, but I finished the sketch anyway. I already started it. Now to give away a little tip, as someone who has finished multiple of these monthly challenges before, I recommend sketching out the days before you get to the actual date, or even the actual month. Since we already get the full list usually a month before, or hopefully the last week of the month before, I sketch out as many days as possible. So I already have every sketch finished before the challenge month even begins. It's the only way I keep up, honestly. I do this to help my indecision, so I don't risk spending majority of the day just trying to think of an idea. And this method helps me a lot to not miss out on days or be late, not including the videos of course. So when I started sketching this day as day 30, I knew something was wrong. So I double checked with the results of the Mystic Wheel spins and saw that my notes app had 2 grapes instead. Eventually I fixed it, and now here we are. Going back to grapefruit, I had kept the same idea from beginning to end. Aside from adjusting her pose to show off her tail better, adjusting the size of her grapefruit and her hair, I added in the stem and leaf for a little more detail. That isn't just the inside of a grapefruit. I decided to make her whole body the same color and texture as her hair, because I wanted to make her have a slightly different outfit in a way. I only thought of turning her top into slices of grapefruits afterwards. It would have been a nice way to break the large chunk of color, but I think her tail fins and hair helped the balance. Honestly, the main thing I would change would be how her tail connects to her tail fins. I would have instead made her tail slowly fade into the light inside of a grapefruit. But besides that, once I finished rendering her, she was finished. Ta-da! A simple sour sea girl. Why was that sentence so easy to do and I keep messing up every other sentence? And now moving on to day 30, we got, a little bit spoiled, grape. It's really funny how I got grapefruit and then grape, like right after. If I didn't spin the wheel, would people believe me? The actual day for the grape mermaid. Now this was another fruit that I was looking forward to designing because I already had a few ideas for her. I definitely wanted to make her hair the bundles of grapes, but also a whole line of grapes. Originally, I was thinking of making them like the vines that grapes grow on, but when I got to looking up references, I got stuck on the idea of somehow including the inside of a grape instead, since I don't really see that often. So I kept the line of grapes even in the resketch. I thought to give her a wine glass for both the obvious wine is made out of grapes and to show off her elegance, which is also why I made her tail like a mermaid dress with similar ruffles. I did think to include a scarf of some kind or like a cover, but I was worried I would take too long perfecting it that I decided to keep her simple. It would have been translucent. I only now considered that I could have added more ruffles down her tail. Honestly, trying to add in the inside of a grape really took up most of my thinking that I can't believe I still didn't even add it in. This is literally why I use the method of sketching everything before the month even begins. Who knows how long it would have taken me to actually draw this if I tried to think of an idea on the same day. The original idea was to make her body the inside of the grape, but then I started worrying about the colors clashing since I used 2 references with different lighting and slightly different colored. I think I just ended up overthinking the whole thing, but rendering her was still really fun. I had unfortunately forgotten her purple nails, but I got her lipstick. I did use the colors of the inside of a grape for her skin tone, and once she was fully rendered with a glass in her hand, she was finished. Ta-da! An elegant mermaid only those who are lucky could ever get close to. And now, to finally wrap up this year's Mermay with the final day of the month, day 31, we got Fig. And here are our remaining fruits that we did not get to, but maybe one day. But for now, our final mermaid. This was also another mermaid that I pretty much kept the same from start to finish. Aside from fixing up her pose a bit, especially the hands, both her spree sketch and line art were very simple to get through. I wanted to make her looking up as a way to say, we did it. The end of Mermay is here, so I had to make sure she was at peace after all that hard work throughout the month. After all, these challenges are difficult for a reason, and everyone deserves a pat on the back, especially if you make it throughout the entire month. At least until next Mermay. Once again, I decided to make use of the inside of the fig for the inside of her hair and her tail fins. I changed the way the tail fin was from the sketch, but I forgot I also wanted part of the outside of the fig on the tail fin. It was one of those moments where you had it in the original sketch, but then lost it by the end of the line art. This is why you should always make your sketches as easy to read as possible. A reminder I leave for myself. But either way, I already had in mind the colors of which fig to use, but it was surprisingly hard to find references for it. There is plenty of variety for figs, and the one I wanted is the one I have on screen, but it was kind of hard to find this reference. I wanted a different picture of the inside, but this is the best one I could find at the time. At least one that showed both the outside and the inside of the fig. So this reference it shall be. Using those colors, I ended up debating mostly about where to put the green. At one point I considered making her top green, but I decided to keep the gradient at the top with a little bit of green here and there. I was a little worried about the inside since I used the same method I used for some of my previous days, specifically like my pomegranate mermaid. I used that method for the seeds. I then added a different color from the original seeds in the reference to add a little bit more detail. I think the way I highlighted that part made them seem more like a pattern than seeds, but I think that still works. The tail was pretty simple thanks to the scales brush, and once I rendered the top fig hair, I added green after I rendered the stem. And then I mixed the green a little bit into the purple to help it blend easier. The only thing I would really change would just be to fix the way I made her hands. I think they might have been better during the sketch phase, but it could be because it was pretty hard to see, or perspective. Either way, I'm still very happy with her, so once I included the final bubbles in all of my mermaids, she was finished. Ta-da! A great end to a wonderful art challenge. And now, finally, here are all the days for this video. The final week. Thank you everyone so much for keeping up with my videos. If you missed any, they will all be in the description down below, or when it comes out in one more video with the entire month of Mermay. Just in case you'd rather have it all in just one video instead of 4 separate ones. And there will be a playlist. So let me know which days have been your favorites. Mine for this week are definitely the grape and the cherry. This whole month has been very challenging, but so much fun. I love Mermay. So I hope you have all been enjoying it as much as I have. I plan to put these mermaids up as stickers along with my fairies from February later in June. So look forward to those in my shop. And if you're upset that this monthly challenge is over, don't worry, because later this year I do still plan on doing a version of InkWitchtober and Huevember in both October and November, as well as more art challenges coming up soon throughout the year. If you have any art challenges in mind, please let me know. But until then, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Check out my shop, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.